because as entrepreneurs, we have a certain streak of crazy in us because it's a path that I don't know if many rational people would follow either. But it's just really kind of understanding what makes yourself tick and aligning yourself with it because my dad always said something which is success follows passion, not the other way around. If you chase success, you're not going to be passionate about it, you're not going to be happy. But if you chase your passion, then success will follow it.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. I am your host, Wayne Veldsman. Today, I am interviewing a energetic individual, Mr. Brandon Thor of Thor Metals Group. They are a gold and silver dealer, I guess you could say, investment company that is helping to manage people's IRAs, just investments in gold and silver. They just now, before this scares you off, they just got voted the overall Gold IRA Company of the Year, as well as Gold and Silver Company of the Year 2025. Go check their website. All the credibilities are up there. In this episode, Brandon shares awesome education about gold and silver, about the industry, but he actually gets really deep and personal about his story, about how he learned that money doesn't bring happiness. His definition of legacy at the end of the episode. Please stick around and hear it, because when I get, it's just such a treat. It's such a treat when I get to speak with high net worth individuals that are dealing in money, but their definition of legacy has nothing to do with wealth. Everybody, you're really, really going to enjoy the episode. I really did. I think my energy in this introduction tells it all in itself, all its own. Without further ado, Mr. Brandon Thor of Thor Metals Group. Brandon, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Dude, my pleasure. I'm already enjoying talking to you just a little bit about California. We're talking about Cape Town. Like, dude, your energy is just unmatched.
Yours is too. You always can tell entrepreneurs because I think we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. If you put a room of us together, either that dinner would go into breakfast, or or there'd just be a lot of just robust conversation. But I've enjoyed just the couple minutes meeting you for sure.
Dude, no, I couldn't agree with you more. It's kind of like where the show started. Actually, was like just a way for me to just meet more interesting people. And I was like, let me just learn their stories, learn from them, and then let's just share stories. And so like that's what we're hoping to do today. And so Brandon, kick us off. Tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, man.
Sure. So, born and raised in Los Angeles. Like I told you just a couple minutes ago, we're known as unicorns. Nobody ever, stays. Usually people come here to be somebody they're not. So that's why they call it a fake city, or that's reputation. But I actually am a unicorn. So I was born and raised here, and just never left. I went to USC, went to USC Law School, USC Business School, was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole in, both corporate America and then also, with the law thing, and then realized, my passion was in A, just doing my own thing, entrepreneurship, and B, I really like sales. I really liked meeting people, interacting with people, understanding what made people tick, and all those things. Obviously, you get to do, in the course of that industry. And it was funny because I also learned that the biggest jerk of a boss that I've ever encountered is myself, and he gets the strongest work product out of me. He's hard, doesn't give me vacations, and I hate working for him, but boy, does he gets his pound of flesh. So, that's kind of where it came from. So basically, after my odyssey with just being a sports agent and an investment banker, then I got into hard metals, and then I finally, had the guts to take the leap and try to carve my own, carve my own little piece out of this.
Man, so many awesome things that we're going to jump into here, honestly. But so today, we'll talk about it more later. But today you're running Thor Metals Group, right? Tell everybody just what is Thor Metals Group up to?
Sure. So we are a precious metals dealer. So we deal with physical gold and silver. So these are actual coins and bars, just investment grade metal that people either acquire, as a alternative to owning dollars, or not owning dollars, holding dollars. So what they would do is, they have dollars collecting dust in a bank account. They think that their wealth is better served in physical gold and silver. They send a bank wire, they convert it into physical metals, and then they take possession, hold it. Obviously, metals have gone up historically, so they liquidate it somewhere in the future, kind of like real estate. Or a lot of folks in the U.S. have retirement plans, IRAs, 401ks, and they're heavily, weighted into the stocks and bonds. If you haven't noticed, just even lately, it's just been absolutely crazy. And so they just want something that's just more consistent, more conservative. So we facilitate them acquiring physical gold and silver within the retirement plan. So that's what we do. We're a broker dealer, and we not only will sell the metals, but we also will buy them back. And I don't know if you want to jump into this now or later, but this basically was a purpose-driven business. This wasn't just, hey, I like gold. It was more, I kind of identified some things that I felt impassioned to not only fight against her, but to kind of fix some things in an industry. And that's what really drove the pursuit.
Yeah, man, I love that. Tell me a little bit more. So first off, right? So Thor Metals Group, right? You said gold and silver, physical holdings, right? Going up in value. That's the whole thought, right? I'm a pretty simple guy, and so I think about it as like another thing to invest in instead of just the stock market, right? Like you said, real estate is a great example right there, also. And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And Wayne, real quick, if I can't, this is the one big thing that I've been trying to get people to understand is that, just because gold and silver is internally valued, so people look at it as an investment because obviously that's what investments are. They're internally valued. Stocks go up and down. It's money. It was money and it still is money in some places. So, if you look at it and you understand it that way, then you can start really unpacking what you're doing now. For example, what your currency is in Cape Town. And, obviously we have the dollar here. And then understanding, hey, do I want to be holding these loans, which essentially the dollar is, it says federal note right on there, backed by the U.S. government, which is a $37 trillion debtor, or do I want to hold, physical gold and silver, something that's been around since Jesus was walking the earth, And so when you pose it that way, people start really thinking critically about why they even hold dollars in the first place and how much of that is conditioning and how much of that is really just their free will or their belief in something that's printed with reckless abandon. So anyways, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's just something that I really want to get that education through to people that hey, you're not forced holding fiat currency as your storage of wealth. You can hold physical gold and silver as a form of currency as well.
I'm so happy that you interrupted me because like that right there is like such great simplified education, right? Instead of holding a loan, a bank note, right? Paper money that's to the US government. We're just talking about the US here, right? But any fiat currencies to governments that are mostly in debt, gold, silver is physical money, right? It has its own hard value asset, it's money.
Yeah, and think about it, I don't know how it is in other countries, but I know here it's wild because everybody knows it has value. If you've ever had a girlfriend or a wife, you certainly know how valuable it is. And it's a weird disconnect because there's the jewelry that people don't bulk when they, you tell them the price of earrings or a chain or whatnot, but less than 1% of people are actually invested in physical gold and silver. So there's a weird disconnect there, and that disconnect is essentially, there's just a abyss where there's not a lot of readily available education. And when you unpack that, you understand why. And the reason why is because if you invest in gold and silver, it's a direct competitor against the banking system. The banking system wants your wealth so that they can lend it out, and that's how they make their money. If you invest in gold and silver, you're a direct competitor against Wall Street and advisors and trading your money and buying mutual funds and annuities and all that stuff. And so they don't want you in it. And then if you invest in gold and silver, it's a referendum against a US dollar that we have recklessly printed and we've amassed, in unfathomable amount of debt. So if you have two multi-trillion-dollar industries and a very, very powerful government, to say the least, not wanting you invested in something, then guess what? You're going to have the situation which exists, which is, everybody understanding gold's value, but yet less than 1% of people actually invested in the asset, regardless of its track record, its consistency and the safety that it provides.
Brandon, you must be a very hated man by the government, by the banking system. Oh man. But also you're a very loved man. I saw that you guys, the Thor Metals Group, you got rated, you got some like awards, right? Best overall gold IRA company, uh gold and silver company. Oh, what these are recent as well, am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I'm very proud of it. I mean, this is my baby, and I really believe that sales, which is something that, believe me, from a very young age, I was talked out of it by my parents who were very traditional. I was a smart kid, obviously, and I was supposed to do smart kid stuff like be a lawyer or investment banking and stuff like that. But sales is really what I caught the bug for and still I love. And I think that, it gets a bad name in that when people say sales, you think of like that, used car salesman with the three gold chains and the slick back hair that's trying to sell
Yeah.
you, a car without a motor. But really the best salesmen on earth are people that deeply understand their client and deeply understand their problem and deeply understand how to solve that problem in a way that the client wins, where they can win with the client, not at the expense of the client. And once you understand that, and you can put that as kind of the value of your organization, then good things happen. And that's certainly what we espouse here. And it's really that culture has led to, obviously a lot of really positive things, and that it means a lot to me because it's really my strong belief in not only sales, but I also believe that life is sales. The best doctors are good salesmen, the best lawyers are good salesmen. So, you see facets of it everywhere. And I think that if you understand what really makes good salesmen, which is not, pulling the wool over someone's eyes or anything else, it's actually really, understanding them, listening to them, doing more listening than talking, which I'm not doing right now. But those things, then I think you can create an organization that solves problems and is also, very profitable and beneficial to yourself as well.
Beautiful. I mean, I didn't expect us to immediately start talking about the power of sales, right? But like your perspective is so spot on. And it's sad that the world is still being deceived by a lot of people. And that's what gives sales a bad rap. But like you said, right, if you can, the power of sales is when you align it with the client to give them a win. The customer should be winning. And that's like when sales is beautiful, right? That's when like that's how I first learned sales is that if you truly believe in your product and you truly believe that it's going to serve the other party, if you don't do everything in your power to try and get them to see it and try and get them to buy, then you're doing them a disservice. And it boils down
Absolutely.
to your integrity, right? And so I'm guessing you think your integrity is pretty high. Like what are your thoughts? Like what did your parents do for a living? How were you raised?
I mean, my mom was a school teacher. My dad owned a construction company. I was raised in a very strict Catholic household. You can fill in the blanks about how that went. But it was a very structured home. I had loving parents, and my mom was always there. She read to me at night and things like that. So I was nurtured in those things. Integrity, being honest, and stuff like that. And look, we have our shortcomings, but as long as you understand what the right way is and you have that North Star and you try your best to follow that North Star as much as humanly possible, then I think that you land in a good place. It's just when you don't have that North Star, or when you're taught the wrong values, or chase the wrong, false idols or false gods, material wealth and things like that, then that's when I think you fall off the path. And I think, Wayne, and I don't know if you agree with me, but I really think if you look at the wealthiest people in the world, I don't think that one of them is in a business that they were in to make money. I think that money was more of the exhaust that came off the rocket as opposed to the rocket. The rocket was something that they truly believed in. They truly believed could serve others, not them. And that's what happens when you align with people and you're correct on that, on that belief. So that's the way I see the world, and that's what I try to bring to the table, in my little piece of the world at Thor Metals Group. But I think that's something that is a major misconception on sales, and I think just maybe even capitalism in general. But I think
Yeah.
if looked upon in the right way, you can get the right message.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. There's no doubt that there are big companies and very wealthy people out there that they don't have the integrity. They are driven just by the money. But I have to agree that I have the strong belief that some of these most successful people, right, they got there because they truly believed in what they were doing, what they were selling, a solution they were bringing to the world. And through that, wealth is sort of a byproduct, right?
Yeah,
From
yeah,
truly
yeah,
helping people. Yeah, Brandon. Earlier
yeah.
you mentioned something to me. Sorry, I'm gonna cut you
No, no,
off.
no, no. Go ahead. No, keep going. Keep going.
Purpose-driven business, right?
Yeah,
I think we're sort of leading that direction because you mentioned like you have to have your integrity, your values, your North Star, right? Tell me more. What is this North Star of yours? And then earlier you mentioned purpose-driven business as well. I think you can relate these together
yeah. I
for
mean, look
us.
at I'll get a bit personal with you because I think it sets the stage of what this means to me because I spent the first half of my life, I think, chasing the wrong things. Chasing maybe someone else's view of what success should look like, or what makes you happy, I guess. And in those pursuits, you know there's nothing scarier than getting to a place where you realize that money doesn't make you happy, because you can always aspire towards money or material wealth, and at least that gives you a focus and kind of a tunnel vision. But once you get to a point where and I'm not saying that I was some billionaire or something, but where you have enough money and you've done enough things where you're like, this is not going to make me happy, and getting more of this is not working. It's a very scary place, because now you're like, you really have to take an introspective look and figure out what's making you tick. And I found it kind of on accident, because chasing money and chasing lucrative careers is what ultimately first led me into the physical metal space. Because a friend of mine from business school was starting a metals company. I was always sharp, and I obviously had a financial background, so he wanted me to be an accepting broker in that firm, which I was, and worked there for a number of years. And it was very lucrative. But I also realized that this industry, and as I progressed in my career, was more and more predatory, and I could sleep less and less at night. It just it felt dirtier and dirtier, the way that the metals are sold and the way that people are exploited, because again of the lack of readily available education. And it just got to a point where I'm making money, I don't believe in what I'm doing, and I have to find, a escape. And that took the form of substance abuse, which is something that I don't hide. And ultimately led to a medical incident. I mean, a significant medical incident where I almost lost my life. And it was the darkest moment that I've ever had, because they always say that your life flashes before your eyes. And I remember I was dying. I mean, I was literally dying. I was suffocating, and I had no memories. I mean, not one trip to Mykonos or car or anything. No memories. And in that moment, it was the worst feeling you could ever feel. You know that your life was a waste. You didn't do anything, and I woke up 3 days later with tubes in me and everything else, and then obviously from there you got straightened out, but I didn't get straightened out as far as I needed to do something. I knew that if I didn't find something that fulfilled me, then this just wasn't going to be tenable. And so that was when I stumbled upon this, which I realized, okay, the polarity of something that totally did not fulfill me would be making it fulfilling. And how would I do that? Well, I would fix the problems that made it unfulfilling to me, which were the predatory business practices, the deals that I felt were very unfair to clients, to exploiting their lack of education and things, and make a company that fixed that, that addressed that. And boy, did that work. That gave me purpose, and I'm thankful for the rest of my life for that. I mean, that is something that I wish that everybody could feel, because it makes you feel like you're contributing something to the world. And I mean, it's something where I think I don't know if it's a secret or something that I found out later, but you don't achieve happiness unless you're somewhat serving others or doing something in the service of others. And that's what I mean by purpose-driven company. So when I started this, it was not, hey, let's make a bunch of money in the metal sector. It was, this is a problem. People are getting hurt. I can fix this. And in doing so, I can fix myself. And it ended up that I was right on both counts.
I I have so much to say and so little words at the same time, Brandon. Like, wow, talk about purpose-driven business. And so let's take them step by step. Make sure that I followed along here, right? You said you were smart kid growing up, right? USC law school, USC business school, right? Corporate. I mean, you didn't even talk about how you were a sports agent for a little while, also, but then investment banker and precious metals dealer. So it sounds to me that all of this in the beginning was chasing money. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Along the way, you found that money doesn't equal happiness. Was it this? I mean, so like I said, you weren't fulfilled. Like you felt like you were deceiving people. Is that kind of what led to, you said there was like an addiction or a drug problem that was going on?
Yeah. I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, it was understanding that, I didn't feel like I was giving anything to the world. I mean, if anything, I was taking away from the world. I was taking away from the quality of people's lives, not giving them a fair shake, not doing what they thought that they were doing, because gold and
Yeah,
silver are
yeah.
very protective, and people that move their IRAs into gold, or people that want to convert dollars into gold, they're trying to protect their wealth. So if you're taking advantage of their lack of education to overcharge them grossly for that physical gold and silver, how the heck do you consider that contributing, to the world? I mean, that's just taking from the world, and that's taking from people's standard of living, and ultimately their life enjoyment. So I knew that, and I think maybe that's where my upbringing and how I was raised came into play, because I had that Catholic guilt, but I also had that North Star, and having that North Star doesn't necessarily mean that you follow it, but it means that you're going to feel really bad if you don't. And so it was a mixture of that with the fact that it was really lucrative, and the fact that I was miserable, and that's when I figured out, like, that this is not the way. This is not going to ever fulfill me, and it's just going to get worse. And but I think there's just such a society societal vision of wealth that's just perpetrated, or perpetuated, I should say, in television and movies and everything. And I feel that, we live other people's lives, or the image that we think that is of a perfect life, or, that people would emulate, even if it's not something that we believe in. And so that's what I was chasing, and it wasn't making me happy. And that's when ultimately I started, trying to just at least numb myself, or escape from those feelings. And that's, obviously a slippery slope, and that's the substance abuse. And that's an isolating thing in and of itself, because you're escaping, but you're also, isolating yourself. You're not solving the problem, and it just gets worse. And so, that just culminated in, like I said, it was an overdose. And that's when I almost lost my life. And that was just pretty much the crux of everything that came after. I think that there's not a lot of people that almost lose their life and are conscious when it's happening, but I was suffocating. And that's when I, had that blank slate when I thought about my life. And that's when I, realized that I didn't know then what I was going to do to solve the problem, but I realized that I had a problem and I had to solve it. And the problem wasn't substances, it was meaning, it was purpose. And that's what needed to be solved.
Wow, man. Yeah. So thank you for sharing, by the way. Like I really appreciate you like sharing like deep, I mean, traumas that happen, right? It's part of the story, it's part of the journey. That's how you got to where you are today. I don't know how to ask this question, if there is an answer to it, because I'm trying to think about people that are out there that are, I mean, maybe they just have the golden handcuffs, right? They're stuck in a job that they're not liking, right? They don't necessarily have an addiction problem, but I want them to be able to make change happen before something intense happens, like what happened to you. I don't know if you have any words of advice. How can they gain the courage or the strength? How do they know to move on?
Yeah, look, it can manifest itself in different forms. And, I like your term golden handcuffs, because that's exactly what it is, right? It's this feeling that, hey, I don't like what I'm doing, but it affords me, whatever, this car and this lifestyle and this vacation and this whatever. But, understanding that our the first part of that statement is insane. You don't like what you're doing, meaning you don't like the majority of your life, or maybe all of it, because you spend the majority of your life working. So isn't that insane? So you're doing something for the majority of your life that you do not like, for what? I mean, and I think the more you really, really think about it, the more irrational it becomes. And the more irrational it becomes, the easier it is to unwind it and realize that maybe there are some things that are more important than that car, or that house, or whatever it is you're chasing.
There's so much more that's important, right? And like, I love how you sort of broke that down really simply. That's like, if you just admit to yourself, I don't like my job, right? It's like, wow, this is actually the majority of your life. At least it's a massive portion, and that's typically going to bleed outside of work also, right? Like, we're not here to suffer in that way. Like, we can make change happen, right? Like, you are a great example of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think, like, it's so funny, but it doesn't have to come in the extreme or radical form of entrepreneurship, because as entrepreneurs we have a certain streak of crazy in us, because it's a path that I don't know, if many rational people would follow either. But it's just really kind of understanding what makes yourself tick, and aligning yourself with it. Because my dad always said something, which is, success follows passion, not the other way around. If you chase success, you're not going to be passionate about it, you're not going to be happy. But if you chase your passion, then success will follow it. and I think he's completely correct. And maybe it's not the quickest route, or maybe it takes, a while, but I think that it's at least a noble journey, and it's something that you will feel good about. And it's really that's at least what I did. Now, again, entrepreneurship is crazy because that has its own set of challenges, and that's a whole different ballgame. But at least maybe aligning yourself in an industry that you believe in more, or a job you believe in more. If you want to be a teacher as opposed to a lawyer, or whatever it is, just doing what makes you happy, and realizing that you don't have an unlimited time on this planet, and it's just foolish to waste any of that time.
Do what makes you happy, right? We don't have an unlimited time on this planet, right? It's foolish to waste that time. So well said. And so, Brandon, something interesting that you noted to me before the interview actually is that when you got into like this precious metal space, right, is that you learned that it sounds like the industry was almost mostly a fraud, if I dare use that word. Tell us a little bit more about what you learned, and then this pivot that you made towards Thor Metals Group to hopefully fix the industry.
Yeah, and look, I got to be very careful for a
Yeah,
multitude of reasons about how
yeah,
we
it's
frame this.
yeah,
People aren't getting chocolate with gold wrapping. They're getting gold.
yeah, 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 yeah,
It's
yeah.
really just it's a function of look at there's bad actors in every industry. There's bad doctors. There's bad teachers. I mean, so there is that. It's just what I realize about this industry. I think that maybe is unique is the sense that because you have so many high profile, high powered, industries and entities not wanting you to invest in this or dissuading you from investing in this, they don't really mind that this industry has a black eye, or that it's the Wild West, or that it's not properly regulated. In fact, it probably serves them better that people get ripped off and that some of these things happen, because guess what? It dissuades investment, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really what I kind of walked into is not necessarily a fraud per se, but just just kind of the culture of let's make as much money as we can off of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And I really said, hey, you can make a really good living and be very successful, be very happy, and provide for your family, provide for your employees by doing things the right way. So why the heck not do it the right way? And so that's just the pivot. It seems innovative, but it isn't. It's just literally what should have been done all along. It's just kind of realizing that whereas with some of these other industries, the SEC or the FBI or these federal agencies are going to come and regulate, just realizing that in this industry, nobody's going to come and save you as the investor or consumer. So the companies need to self-regulate themselves and need to be accountable, and that's at least what I could do is take care of my side of the street, and that's what Thor Metals Group does is we take care of our side of the street, and we try at any opportunity to just take that microphone and educate, explain, have people understand it, because at the end of the day, physical gold and silver is, in my opinion, the best, safest form of money, asset, investment, whatever you want to call it, on this planet, especially in such an uncertain world. And if sold the right way, it does incredible things for legacy, for families, for protection of wealth. And but if sold the wrong way, of course, not
Yeah,
so incredible things. So
yeah.
I think that it's really something that is not hard to understand with the proper education. But again, if you have an industry that culture is to see how much profit we can make, or how much we can make off these deals, then it's not in their best interest to provide that education. Whereas in our company's interest, we do want to provide that education. We feel that we can make a fair living and the client can win as well. We don't have to win at the expense of them.
Definitely. You don't have to win at the expense of the client. And, let me just throw something in there that when I said the word fraud earlier, right? That was me using a term that I thought was correct or easy to understand. That wasn't what you had told me previously by any means, just so that everybody understands this. But it's great that you guys are leading with education. And so, if you can break it down somewhat simply, like what are you all doing differently than maybe, I don't know if it's the majority of other gold and silver companies, or let's just say these companies that are more in it for their own gain versus trying to actually help the consumer. What are you all doing differently?
Sure. So here's the thing. Um, Most companies they want to sell on fear. They have some conservative firebrand, some celebrity endorser that gives them some instant credibility, and then they're gonna sell on Joe Biden stealing your bank account, for example, or some fear mongering, because that's obviously a very strong emotion. Humans are risk adverse, and then they'll take the ball and run with it. A lot of buying gold and silver is quite easy, and it's quite easy to wrap your head around. You want to buy 99.9% pure investment grade metal. You don't want to buy stuff that fell off Jolly Roger's pirate ship. You want to buy coins or bars. But here's where the I guess the gray area is that, okay, in that category of metals that you want to buy, well, that's where these companies kind of, some of them will pivot, because what they'll do is they'll get one of these government mints to create a coin for them. It will look like it's made by the Royal Canadian Mint, but it's actually made just for that gold company. And because you can't price check it, then you're at the mercy of a silver tongue broker telling you why this coin is the best thing since sliced bread, and it does this, that, and the other thing. And that's where you find these grossly overpriced metals, and a very inexperienced new investor. You're not. I don't want to use the word falling for it, because I mean they're just trusting that the broker has their interest in mind. But that's really what was going on. A lot of that type of stuff, where they're trying to find ways to make big profits on things that should not have that big of a margin. And so basically what we've done is, okay, we're going to educate you. We're going to explain this. We're going to pull back the curtain, like I just did right there, and explain, how the sausage is made in the industry as a whole. And then we're going to then tell you what the correct way of buying gold and silver is, so that you don't freak out and think that, hey, this is complicated, or I'm at risk of losing this money. Because if you just follow the beaten path, you're not at any risk. If you get universally recognized, globally liquid metal like American Eagles, Maple Leaves, bars, coins, rounds, you'll be fine. And it's very easy for you to actually vet it, because you can price check an American Eagle. It's sold at 10,000 dealers. But when you have these proprietary coins, these obscure coins that are commissioned, then when you go to price check it, you don't find it, and then you're subject to this broker's story. And hey, people, we work, so they don't have time to hear 10 different companies tell a story, or maybe stumble upon my company and hear us really explain what's going on. And so ultimately, maybe they'll call the wrong company. They'll get the story, it sounds good, they'll do the buy, and then after the fact, they're like, oh shoot, what I do? I just bought $250,000 worth of gold and paid 500,000 or 600,000 for it. So that's what we just trying to do, is not only do things the right way, but just that education, because that education will fix everything. It'll breed a different type of company that will end up probably competing against, but it'll fix the industry as a whole.
Nice, nice. I like it. So if I'm understanding you correctly, right, it's there are some gold and silver dealers that are creating their own proprietary, what does you say, gold coin, right? So it seems very unique and a one of 10 ever made. And so they can sell the story about why it is more valuable, when in fact, actually, the value is just simply for the actual gold. And so we're better off, or what you all do is sell these, I like how you said the beaten path, like follow the beaten path, right? The actual coins or bars that are sold at 10,000 different dealers, and like you can check the value. You know it's real and true. It's not just this new proprietary thing that was kind of made up.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things where, there's some easy litmus tests, which is like, okay, if I was to drop you off in, Paris, France, or Saudi Arabia, would I rather have a pocket full of American eagles or these three-toed dolphins or these obscure coins that, these other companies are pushing? And if the answer is the eagles, then you kind of start understanding that's a better market, right? That's a stronger market. That's a more liquid market. That's where I should be. And as an investor, if you could just think critically and not just get wrapped up in the emotion, because again, what these companies do is they sell the general emotion and they sell generally what gold and silver will achieve, which is it will protect against dollar devaluation. It will protect against market volatility, geopolitical uncertainty, but they don't finish the equation with you just need to make sure that you're also getting a fair deal and getting the right metals that exist in the right markets. But again, as long as you're aware of this, then it's a very easy problem to solve. As long as if someone watches this interview, I think that they're bulletproof against any of these schemes because hey, it's pretty easy once you understand, what these guys are pulling and who's doing what and what you should be buying. It's pretty easy to discern the difference.
Nice. Nice. Brayden, thank you for sharing the education, man. I mean, this is something that I personally didn't even know about. Like you said, now anybody that's listening, watching, they have the understanding. It's not rocket science, right? But we don't know what we don't know. And so let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about legacy, right? That's like what the whole theme is of the show. And so start me off, define for me what does legacy mean to you?
You know, I think when you define legacy, you have to be very careful because I think that we are way too quick to lean into ego when defining something that shouldn't have that represented. Ego is I want a statue or I want a park bench named after me or I want a library or whatever. But legacy is really, who comes to your funeral, man? Who you touch. Um, and that I think is the greatest test of a human life, of the value of a human life is, hey, if that church is packed or, that memorial is standing room only, that person, it doesn't matter what they did, they were a decent human being. And that to me is what you want to aspire towards. I think that's a legacy that's worth that's worth pursuing.
Brandon, I love when I get answers like this, exactly what you just said. I mean, I couldn't agree with it more. And so that's probably why I like it, because you just floated my own ego to be like, that's what I believe in also. But especially coming from an individual like yourself, right? Like you directly, your business is money, right? Your business is helping people make more money. And for you to say that legacy is more than just that, right? Than the amount of money that you make or your ego of a statue or your name on a bench or a building, right? It's how many people's lives you actually impacted. That great way to think about it, that come to your funeral, come to the memorial, I think is just so powerful. And so through Thor Metals Group specifically, like what do you think is the legacy that you all are leaving? Like what's the impact that that's going to have on your life and others?
I hope that the impact that we lead is, I mean, by example, by, aggressive education, just making sure that just people's lives are positively affected, that somebody that was going to, make a horrible mistake in an investment that was actually a really good decision doesn't do that, and is able to take that trip to Europe or is able to, pay for their grandchildren's education like they wanted to, that they're able to achieve their goals that they believe they'd be able to achieve through gold and silver, which was a correct belief. But the only thing that they didn't do correctly was they made the mistake of believing somebody, and that's horrible. And so, if my company has any legacy, I would hope that is that we were the first ones before anyone had to regulate the industry, before anyone had to put rules in place that said, you know what, this is the right way to do things. And because we did things right, everybody that did business with us was able to achieve what they thought they were going to achieve. We can't control if gold and silver goes up or down, but we can control if you're getting the right metals at the right price. And we can control that you're achieving what you're trying to achieve, by acquiring gold and silver.
Nice, Brandon. I absolutely love that, right? Before somebody has to come in and regulate the industry, right? You guys are doing it the right way so that people can achieve their goals that they set out to achieve, right? Awesome. I thank you so much for that. Thank you for the education that you shared with me, that you're sharing with the entire world, not just this industry. It's really so, so important. If people want to learn more from you or just go learn more about Thor Metals Group, where should they head to?
Yeah, if you go to our website, so www, I don't know if you do www, but
You can, but no.
it's thormetalsgroup.com. So THORMETALS group.com. So www.thormetalsgroup.com. Or you can give us a call, and the number is 866-944-Thor. Listen, we've gotten decently sized, but I will always personally field the call, and I love to teach, as you can probably tell. So if anybody wants to speak with me specifically, they just need to ask, and I'm mention the show. I'm happy to chat with them. I'm happy to answer questions or whatever they need. And if they're interested in acquiring gold and silver, we'll certainly help them out. That's what we do.
And that's a wrap. Everybody, thank you for being here today. I greatly appreciate you. Go check out Brandon and Thor Metals Group. I really enjoyed the interview a lot. I'm still kind of speechless. I was speechless in the middle of it, but awesome lessons, huh? And he told us about how sales, you should make it all about the client's win, right? He chased the wrong things in life. He chased money, then it led to drugs and addiction and overdosing. And he almost lost his life. He said 3 days later, he woke up in the hospital and decided to change everything. And he turned to creating a purpose-driven business, right? Business that is all about serving others. He said that happiness equals serving others. And oh, what a cool lesson that his dad taught him, right? That success follows passion and not the other way around. It might not be instantaneous or the fastest way to success or money. Because my definition of success is kind of very little to do with money. But success follows passion. And he directly says, do what makes you happy. Everybody go check out Brandon and Thor Metals Group. Thanks again for being here today. If you are looking for help in finding your direction in life, whether it's both personally or professionally, I want to invite you to come over to journeytolegacy.org. We are a community of almost entirely entrepreneurs, but we're a community of individuals working to better themselves holistically in life, to achieve happiness, to take the uncomfortable steps of what it takes to be our best selves, find happiness, find success, for whatever the definition is for you. Come check us out over at journeytolegacy.org. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. My name is Wayne Veldsman, and we'll see you soon.